Alright, I got a ringing in my left ear. I often get headaches, especially on the left hand side of my head, since going to Virginia in 2016 on my birthday, October 18th of 2016. Um, I was there to visit a friend of mine at her request. Her name was Natalie Bollinger. Now, I'm basically making this video as a primer, but also to address a lot of the things that the doctor said that they're absolutely correct, given the right situation. And although I do think of her as a highly intelligent person, I also am a highly intelligent person. And a lot of the things that she said, under the right circumstances, are correct, but under my circumstances are not. A lot of the questions that she was reading and that she was addressing, they were a few minutes old by the time she got to it, and that's just the nature of YouTubing. I mean, you're busy reading, or you're busy researching, or you're busy doing a lot of other stuff. Now, if this was a live video, which I can't exactly do here because it ends up, I, it'll allow me to record for 38 minutes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was right around 38 minutes on that one video that I have that's only 13 seconds long. So this is the way that I have to record it. If I was to do it the normal way, as I'm speaking, I'd be going through and I'd be clicking on the stuff that, in the live feed. I'd be clicking on the different videos and putting them over here so that people could actually reference them and see them for themselves. There's also the race issue that, of course, we want to avoid that. We also want to avoid talking about death. But then there's the mind your own business. Mind your own business. And I get it. I do get somewhat. But at the same time, this is America. We the people. Not mind your business. If you mind your business, black people would still be slaves in this country. Thank goodness for over 1 million white northerners. Thank goodness they didn't just run around telling each other, mind your business. Mind your business. You try applying that to BLM. We'll talk about, of course, over 300 white women standing in front of a bunch of black protesters so those black protesters don't get shot by the cops. Now let's apply this to that. How about if we tell all those white women, hey, mind your business. Mind your business. You ain't black, mind your business. Yeah, that don't apply. Black people are still people. Sure, they're not getting murdered at anywhere near the rate of homeless people. I mean, what are your chances of being killed by a police officer every year as a black person? Depending on what statistic you're reading, it's anywhere between 1 in 250,000 and 1 in a million. Almost 1 in a million. And it all depends on who you're asking, what site collected the information, how many different places they went to collect the information. But one thing is abundantly clear. The homeless still have it worse. The homeless amount for less than 0.2% of the population, yet they account for 81% of the incarcerated population. They account for 0.2% of the population, yet they account for 5 times more hate crimes against them than all other hate crimes in America combined. And then we want to talk about protocols, and she goes a lot into that. Like when she starts speaking about protocols, and she also talks conceptually. Conceptually, yeah, you can say anything conceptually. Conceptually, if somebody wants to beat you up, you can just walk away. That's your advice that you're given. You should have just walked away. But then again, let's say Your cat ran away. You're out looking for your cat. Now, obviously, this is something that no big thing. It happens. You go out to get your cat. Your cat is in a corner next to the dumpster, and you bend over to pick up your cat, and then somebody behind you starts assaulting you. Now, of course, that's probably not going to be somebody random. It's not going to be somebody random who's just coming up to you and assaulting you for no reason. Maybe it's somebody who lost their girlfriend because she had a crush on you. Maybe it's someone who just doesn't like your skin color. Maybe it's just somebody who thinks that they can get away with it because you're alone. But chances are pretty good that it's somebody who holds a grudge. The first type, whether it's a girlfriend or whatever, don't matter. Now, one of the things that she said, without looking at any evidence, I was trying to explain to her that it wasn't just people's opinions. See, this is something that she pushed through the whole video, and she's right about it under the right circumstances. But when that results in innocent people being beaten and being murdered and being illegally and immorally incarcerated, that is a far cry from something that you can ignore, and at that point, it is your business. And I'm going to tell you something about those 300 white women who stood in front of those black protesters. That is their business. That is absolutely those women's business. Those very same rights are also their rights. This is the United States of we the people, or rather, it's supposed to be. Dr. Carroll did not get to see all of the stuff that I've been through, and why would she? You know, most of the time when I get on there, she's talking about P. Diddy, or she's talking about famous people, a lot of different famous people. Today, she literally spent the whole entire session. This is a lady who is well known. She's got a lot of people who subscribe to her channel, a lot of people who listen to her, and she spent the whole hour addressing my issues. Although it wasn't in real time, and that made it a more complicated situation because she'll go off for 5 to 10 minutes about how it should be, and by that time I've already typed why it isn't the way that it should be. In a ideal situation, yes, all this stuff works, but she also speaks about these protocols and how they're used supposed to help us, and so on and so forth. And of course, if you look at my situation, you get to see how those very same protocols were used to harm me by my predators. We talked about schizophrenia, and I did explain I've never been diagnosed with schizophrenia, but that the police officers, literally the police officers I was trying to turn in, took me to the hospital and told the hospital that I was schizophrenic, and the hospitals wrote it down. However, it was not a diagnosis from a doctor. It was written down because that's what the police told them. And she does address that somewhat. But a lot of her beliefs are centered around the idea that this system works. And it absolutely doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. Now, and she talks about the way that it should be, and she doesn't really address the fact that that's the way that it should be, not necessarily the way that it is. Because in many cases, it's not the way that it is. Also, she says often that the why is not important. Why is not important. Why is not important. Well, why is. When somebody is suicidal, there's a reason why. Why is that girl cutting on herself? Well, Dr. Caroline, I'm sure in her education, is already aware of these things. It's a two-part system. Number one, you were molested or raped or are being otherwise physically abused or neglected. The number one, though, is sexual abuse. But that abuse is the first part. The second part is when you try to tell on your abuser. Now you're taught this as a kid, especially somebody like me. I went into the system when I was 4 because my parents couldn't stay off the cocaine. And of course, a lot of people want to pretend this is a black problem. This is a no, 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 no. It's in this country. It's our problem. It is collectively our problem. If you look away and mind your own business, we end up with a country like what we got now. You cannot go anywhere in the country without running into tweakers. Why is that? Well, now it's because there's just too many of them. But also it's because people wanted to mind their own business. They don't want to get picked on. They don't want to get shot by drug dealers. It's easier just to look away, like our government does. We also addressed my medicines. See, I spoke about the medicines that I was on a little bit and the fact that I got off of them at a doctor's request, and she took it completely off into left field. Like, well, the dangers of getting off your medications if you need them. No, 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 no. Side effects. See, I was put into the system when I was 4. Between the age of 4 and the age of 17, I did not know a single day without drugs. And I'm not talking about street drugs. I'm talking about Ritalin. I'm talking about Ativan. I'm talking about lithium. Lithium is highly fucking dangerous. Pardon my French. Now, another thing is bullying. And she does address that too. I admitted to being a bully. Goddamn right I do. If you were to ask the people in this Starbucks here what I'm like, and you were to look at my channel and see what I'm like, they do not line up. Not even close. Now, of course, Dr. Caroline is a black woman, which I'm not sure how much I've shared on this about my life growing up, but I grew up in the system with black people. And I'm not trying to be racist by saying this, but black people put me at ease just because they exist in my environment. That's because of something called familiarity. And familiarity is important to all of us, not just somebody who's autistic. Your immediate family is your familiarity. A lot of people who are abused and get out of that situation, the reason that they go back is because of familiarity. It's easier to slide back into it in a familiar environment. Now, we've got a situation here where we've got a bunch of people that we fought for rights, for equal rights. And now we're having to deal with a bunch of extremists who hate us and are not willing to acknowledge that we are still fighting for their rights. I'm not gay. I still fight for homosexual rights. I am against marriage. So why do I support gay marriage if I'm against marriage? Because I think it's equal. If I'm allowed to get married, you should be allowed to get married. If I'm allowed to love someone, you should be allowed to love someone. Now, of course, then you run into people like me. I'm known for being a big mouth. A lot of people are mad at me about my mouth, and that's fine. They shouldn't have hidden the truth. Now, what I had to deal with the Bollinger situation, with the mind your own business thing, right? Nobody was minding their business. Now, all the things that I said that people wanted to pretend I was crazy for saying, I've already proven it's true. I've already proven it. I have shown on this channel my medical records. At least the ones I have access to. Which, of course, being homeless, not having access to a mailbox, makes it difficult to get everything that I need, don't it? Oh yeah. Plus, there's the fact that I'm disabled. I live on a fixed income. Now, while I get to hear a lot of women, their excuse when I try to get something done about my abuse and get it to end, I got to deal with a lot of women saying hateful stuff. A lot of women trying to change the subject, trying to project on me everything horrible that ever happened to them because I'm a male. So, as a victim, I'm being targeted by other victims because I'm not the right color or not the right gender. Is the LGBT community going to fight for me? No. Is BLM going to fight for me? No. Do I want the KKK or the Aryan Brotherhood fighting for me? Absolutely not. Now, there's a lot of topics on her channel that, she tries to avoid difficult topics and difficult subjects, and understandably. One slip of the tongue, and you're in deep shit. You said something you didn't mean to say, or the words didn't come together properly, and then all of a sudden, you're some sort of fucking satanic ritualist who's out to destroy everybody's life. And obviously, she doesn't want to have to deal with all that fucking drama. Whew, thank goodness she isn't a politician. Now, I suppose I should probably get on here and read some of the stuff that I do need to put up in this video. One of them is going to be caravan coaching. I'm going to put that link in there. I'm also going to, that's one therapist. Oh my God, when you hear that conversation, holy hell. Oh. But then there's also Marcia Estrada. And a lot of the assumptions that Dr. Caroline made from the brief descriptions I was capable of making with, of course, you only get 200 characters to type in there at a time, so you can't exactly spell out your whole story or all the details. Oh. She's talking about also a lot of things that, well, for example, when you're rambling, right? Like, I ramble a lot. But there's also a lot that's happened. So she speaks about listening to what they're rambling about. Obviously, I'm not rambling about magic unicorns and the leprechaun I have in my pocket. Obviously, I'm not talking to imaginary people. My predators do exist. My witnesses do exist. I got a whole channel full of witnesses conversations, actual conversations with the witnesses that verify that I'm telling the truth. Now, of course, Dr. Caroline, the real issue here from the very start is the fact that the term mentally ill takes away all of someone's rights. Someone who is quote unquote mentally ill is disabled. No ifs, ands, or buts. There is no way around it. If you want to pretend otherwise, you are going out of your way to prove your stupidity. See, at that point, it's not ignorance. You're aware of it. Just like the situation with black people being harmed in the way that they are being harmed in this country. That doesn't mean that every black person is harmed that way. But it becomes a complicated situation where we're dealing with opinions rather than facts. And a lot of her stuff, like I said, it's conceptualized. It's given freely, but without all of the information. Like that analogy that I make about how you've got a bridge that you need to build. And, you start off with just the generalization. You go to your friend and you say, hey, I need help building a bridge. You don't lay it all out for them at the beginning. You let them know what the job at hand is, and then you tell them what it'll involve. But you tell them you need to build a bridge, and you can't do it yourself, but they tell you got to do it yourself. Right? And you say, well, I'm not capable of doing it myself. I need help building this bridge. I have to get to the other side, and I have to be able to travel back and forth. And they say, oh, well, why don't you just make a boat and float across. Well, for starters, I don't have the stuff to make a boat. But also, there's the fact that the thing is a pretty fast flow or an extremely fast flow. So I'm not going to get across in a boat. If I go into a boat, it's going to carry me way downstream. I might hit some rapids and flip over. So you try explaining that to them, and they sort of listen to it. Well, all right, I got this other idea for you, Sean. Why don't you just make a floating pontoon bridge? Well, again, I already told you it's going too fast. We have to put the pontoons there without them floating downstream. Well, all right, you know, they kind of sort of listen, but at this point, they're listening a lot less because you're shooting down all their ideas. Meanwhile, you're not actually shooting down their ideas. The project itself and the logistics involved render their ideas useless. Then they want to tell you, well, why don't you just walk across? It's too deep. All right, it's going to go over my head, and it's too fast flowing still. So they're still not registering that this is a fast flowing river. So then, they're like, well, why don't you just take a board and slide it across? Well, if I could just take a board and slide it across and walk across the board, I could probably just jump across. But, they sell some pretty long 2x4s and 2x6s and 4x4s. You get them in some pretty decent lengths, you know. But at the same time, if the river that you got to cross is 100-yard wide, well, that goes out the window. But at that point, when you're telling them it's too wide to do that, they're telling you you're just making excuses. You're just making excuses. They want their ideas to fix a situation they know nothing about. And the more you try to explain it to them, because they keep on interrupting to make suggestions, the more pissed off they're getting at you like you're making excuses. No, you are aware of your situation. And that's why giving advice to someone without knowing the situation is useless. It's entirely useless. Also, general memes and sayings do not fix situations. They don't. You just gotta love yourself. When you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer. When you need a doctor, you need a doctor. You just gotta love yourself. Does not get you a lawyer. It does not get you a doctor. Then there's the people who are supposed to help. Now, Dr. Caroline addresses the fact that you're basically screwed without a support network. And I had a support network. I was separated from my support network. And that separation from them created a lot of serious issues, like communication through texting. Similar to when I was typing to her in the live chat on her channel and she was talking. Sometimes she wouldn't address what I had typed for 5 minutes after I typed it. But I typed it as soon as I heard her say something that it was a reply to. So she gets to it 5 minutes after the comment that she had made that it was originally addressing. And I have the same thing on my channel. It's not like this makes her a bad person. Now, I could do what many people do to me, which is try to warp it and manipulate it and twist it so that somehow it's her fault. My mom is very good at this. See, my mom is a master manipulator. See, she can try to tell people, you were born in 1980, right? And when was John F. Kennedy assassinated? Well, that was the 1960s. But my mom will try to twist and manipulate and warp what you said and warp her words into somehow it's your fault that John F. Kennedy was assassinated before you were born. Now, obviously, anybody with a brain is going to know it's bullshit. But then again, my mom was very sly with her words. Now, as far as mind your business goes, you know, to somewhat of an extent, I do agree with that. But also, I understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of long-term severe abuse. See, I didn't just go out and bully people for no reason. And that's something that also needs to be addressed. I went to all the people you're supposed to go to. When you're a kid, they teach you, all right, if you have a problem where you're being bullied, and, Dr. Caroline said, well, you're not being assaulted or you're not being hit. No, I absolutely was. See, people don't want to make the connection between opinions and violence. The KKK kills black people over opinions. Opinions. Your opinion could get an innocent person killed. Your opinion. Wars are fought over opinion. Sure, you shouldn't care about other people's opinions. This is one of the biggest chunks of bullshit that America sells its citizens. It's horrible. You shouldn't care what other people think. Well, there's a reason that they spend so much time and money trying to affect the way that you think. There is a reason, for those of you who want to pretend that looks are not important, there is a reason that most of these commercials are choosing supermodels, pretty people, to sell their products. They're trying to affect your opinion, and the more they bombard you with that, the more it affects your opinion. The more they tell you that Russia's evil and Ukraine are these mighty wonderful people who are defending themselves, but do we apply that to our own citizens? No, we victimize our citizens, and then when they try to defend themselves against the abuse, we abuse them further for being abused. And then they get to use protocol. See, that's the issue with Natalie Bollinger's situation. Cops did not want to do their job. It is a felony for these people to do the things that they did to me. It's a felony for the people who threatened my life. It's a felony for the people who assaulted me. But then again, I have no voice because I've been called mentally ill. Marcia Estrada is not going to speak up for me. Penny Cooper for certainly is not going to do her job. And that's one of the things with Dr. Caroline. She talks about what these people's jobs are. And it's obvious that in my situation, these people did not do those things. But also, and I suppose I should have probably said this at the very beginning, I'm Nebraskan. Nebraska, that's right. Where they hate everybody who isn't white. Unless you get to Omaha. Holy shit, that place is exactly the opposite. That place is full of black folks, many of whom hate you for being white. That doesn't mean that every black person in Omaha hates white people. And it doesn't mean that every white person in western Nebraska hates black people. But at the same time, you're having to deal with a severely fucked up mentality from a large portion of the population. Now, a lot of people, when I was abused and I was trying to get help and people were ignoring me, would say things like, well, I'm not abusing you, Sean. I didn't come to you for help stopping abuse from you. I came to you because I'm being abused. My rights are being violated, and nobody is protecting my rights. I cannot physically defend myself against these assailants. Natalie Bollinger was killed in 2017 after an entire year of hell. Now, when I first started off with the situation with Natalie Bollinger, I was so nice about it. I really was. I unblocked her from my Facebook. I typed in there what was going on. I was nice about it. When that didn't work, I started posting up what happened on my Facebook. I left out all of the stuff that was embarrassing to her. I left out the fact that her ex-boyfriend, Tim Beeson, was a majority of the reason that when Natalie wanted to hang out, she wanted to hang out. The majority of the time that she couldn't when we had made plans is because of Tim Beeson threatening to blow his head off. Why? Because she wasn't letting him touch her vagina anymore. This is a highly abusive individual. Just like Ted Bollinger, who raped the shit out of her. Now, does Dr. Caroline have access to this information? No, she doesn't, but she very easily could. The reason that I ramble is because it became such an incredibly complicated situation. The words mentally ill were used to deny me my rights throughout all of this. When my bullies bullied me to the point of suicide, they victimized me to the point that I was suicidal. And then I was victimized by the cops I was trying to turn in for being suicidal. They didn't bother to ask why, and that's something that I 100% disagree with Dr. Caroline on. You always need to ask why. Why is that girl cutting on herself? Why is that boy suicidal? Why is that woman cutting on herself? Why is that man suicidal? Mind your own business only goes so far. And of course, we've got hundreds of examples why. And we only need to go as far as Martin Niemöller and his poem, When They Came, to understand why mind your own business is the worst thing that you can possibly do. Sure, they might leave you alone for right now, for temporarily, but eventually you're gonna be the next one in line. You might be number 2 in line. You might be number 20 in line. You might be number 50 in line. But you're still in line. Now, we don't have to look any further than Nazi Germany for this. In the beginning, it was hatred against the Jews and the blacks. And they must all be punished. And, of course, the communists, then. We've got to punish the communists, don't we? But by the end of the war, that's right, folks, the Nazis were shooting their own people. Literally by the hundreds in Berlin. Murdering their own citizens. The very citizens who, for over a decade, had been supporting this, or faithfully turning a blind eye, or reasonably minding their own business. Well, what did minding their own business get them? It got them slaughtered like fucking pigs. Lambs to the slaughter. Now, what resulted from America not minding their own business? Great Britain not minding their own business? France not minding their own business? Well, for starters, Jews were not wiped from the face of the planet. Also, black people were not wiped from the face of the planet. Thank goodness for people who did not mind their own business. Thank goodness. Now I'm going to post up the thing with Dr. Caroline as well, so you can listen to it. You can read the live chat. You can see what's going on. You can also see how her assumptions, although completely wrong, the things that she had to say about the situation because of her assumptions are essential. They're essential for understanding it. They're essential for understanding her mentality and the mentality of a lot of people very similar to her in thinking. She didn't want to make the connection between rumors and violence. She also didn't want to address the connection between rumors and violence. Much like people, for example, with me being treated like I'm gay, being assaulted for being gay, being threatened for being gay, having my loved ones threatened for being gay. And have I ever been gay? No, but it doesn't matter. Whether I'm gay or not does not make that okay. Now, then there's the defense issue. Yes, I bullied people back. Absolutely. And as a measure of defense, it was essential because the things you're taught to do, you go to the bully first. You tell them how it makes you feel. That didn't work in fucking kindergarten, and it still doesn't work now. If it's a rumor that you're being abused over, you go to the source of that rumor and you tell them those things. Well, that doesn't go any better. Then you're supposed to go to a person of authority, a teacher or a cop or your parents or someone like that. Well, what happens when they blow you off or say they can't do nothing about it? See, that didn't work in kindergarten either. That got my ass beat in kindergarten and it gets my ass beat today. So what we're taught to do doesn't work, but if they keep on pounding it at us over and over and over, eventually it doesn't work. No matter how much you try to pound it in, it doesn't work. No matter how much you try to convince somebody that they can row across the ocean, if they've got a rowboat in the center of the Sahara Desert, you're never going to make it to the ocean to row across it. Ever. You're going to fucking die in the Sahara Desert trying to drag your boat. And I get that I use a lot of metaphors. And that's something that people who are autistic are not supposed to know about. We're not supposed to get it or understand it. We do. All right. It don't make any damn sense, but when you explain to us what it's supposed to mean, we have the word association with it. Yes, we get that what you just said that doesn't make any damn sense actually means something else. And that comes into another major issue. People wanting to reinterpret. We see this done with the Bible all the time. How people want to selectively reinterpret the words of this book to hate who they want to hate. Now, of course, I'm talking excitedly right now. I'm using my hands a lot. I'm doing a lot of gesturing. But I'm not talking about magical unicorns or the leprechaun I have in my pocket. I'm not talking about some imaginary creature that I can see. I'm not talking about voices that I hear. Whoa. You guys hear that? Someone called my name. I'm fucking with you. Now, of course, this is a serious issue, and I try not to break character. I try not to laugh. I try not to smile. I want you guys to understand this is a serious issue. When I went to people and I spoke to them like this about what I'm going through, about the abuse that I'm going through, I had to say these things to some of these people over a dozen times, and they still magically forget it every time. Like, yeah, dude, the stream is too fast. Your second idea, the stream is still too fast. Your third idea, the stream is still too fast. If I talk to you like an idiot who is not listening, you're going to get pissed. You're not going to be happy about being talked to like you're a fucking moron. But then again, you're being a moron. What the fuck do you expect? I've said it in plain and simple English. Now, of course, long-term abuse. You're trying to get help stopping this. You're trying to get help stopping this. You are being ignored. You're being blown off. You're being treated like it's no big thing. You're being assaulted, and you go to tell people, and they want to tell you, just let it go. Just let it go. God damn, that worked. Why don't you just leave the situation? Well, I've moved over 40 times. Just since Natalie was killed. Probably closer to 50 now, but how could I even count all those places. How can I even remember all those places when there's so many? I got to sit down and go through all of my evidence. And thank goodness, not all of it's been destroyed. Thank goodness, most of it is time and date stamped, so it shows the manipulation. It shows the abuse. It shows that the things that I had to do out of desperation were out of desperation. It shows that the things that I did to try to get a court date by doing those things that others were doing to me, and mind you, not even the worst ones. I picked the mildest things that my predators were doing, and I did those things loud and proud on my YouTube. I would not have had to do that with a situation where I had actually had a support network, not people who conceptually have this idea that they want to help me, but then the reality of the situation enters in. Now, you guys have probably, at least some of you, gotten to hear the video where Brett Roloff is digging through the fucking toilet trying to find a bag of meth. That's right, he was digging through his own feces for a bag of meth. That was one of the people who was going to help me. He was going to help me to turn in my predators. Would have been nice to know he was strung out on meth before I went there and got stranded. People say, well, that's your fault, that's your fault, that's your fault. No, it's not. I did the best I could with the resources I had. Hindsight is 2020. You can go ahead and tell me all about what I should have done, but the fact is, most of your ideas about what I should have done, I tried and they did not work. Now, what's the third thing that you're supposed to do when you're being bullied? Obviously, going to the cops got me blown off. Obviously, going to my predators and asking them to stop only made it worse. You're supposed to go to your friends. That's what you're supposed to do. And of course, you got this list, and this list is on quite a few of my posts, of course. This list of things you're not supposed to say to a survivor because they're dismissive as fuck. And you get to see how when I went to my friends, these are the things they wanted to tell me. All of these dismissive things that you're not supposed to say. Things that literally do make things worse. Things that you say that are so dismissive that people literally kill themselves over you saying those things. And of course, Dr. Caroline, a lot of the stuff that she says is absolutely correct. And like I said, not in my situation. When she wanted to outright and blatantly claim that I wasn't being assaulted, maybe not at that particular moment. That doesn't mean that none of this abuse happened. That doesn't mean that this abuse does not affect the rest of my life. One of the things that was used to claim that I was lying or that I was schizophrenic, that I was never allowed to defend myself against, I said that one of my videos from when Natalie died got almost 94,000 views. And guess what? When I got access to that, I posted it up just to prove it. Yes, absolutely, that is true. That video did get almost 94,000 views. Now, when you're trying to turn in a bad cop and you are prevented from doing so, that allows that cop to have access to you again. So you need to be able to turn them in, but without a support network, and that's something that Dr. Caroline spoke about. All of this was because I didn't have an actual support network. I had bullshitters. I had people who had a conceptual idea but didn't give a fuck about the reality. They didn't bother to ask why. Or they wanted to mind their own business because it wasn't happening to them. Or there was the people who tried to defend me on Facebook to begin with, and then when they were attacked for doing so, they didn't take it out on their attackers. They did not take it out on the people who tried to destroy their Facebook. They didn't take it out on the people who were threatening to kill them and their families. They took it out on me. Sean, this is all your fault. Absolutely not. I am not responsible for your actions. I am not responsible for their actions. If you were backed into a fucking corner by those people, those are your predators. You go after them. You do not go after the fucking victim, you piece of shit. Now, of course, I gotta... Oh, shit. Starbucks closes in like 2 minutes. So I gotta get out of here. Sorry, folks. Be safe.